Caught you having a cup of coffee. How about that? Good morning.
I'm going to continue to have a cup of coffee. Good morning, Mike.
Yeah. How are you today?
I'm good.
Good.
I'm good.
Welcome. I haven't done any of these podcasts for quite a while now, so I may be a little bit rusty, but you'll pick up the slack, right?
Well, since this is the first one I've ever done, probably not.
Oh, okay. So blind leading the blind.
I've done lots of webinars, but never done a podcast.
Yeah, I don't know if they traditionally still call them a podcast when you have video, or are they video casts now? I'm not sure.
I actually don't know either.
So while we wait for people to get organized, we do deal with human behavior, so we need to consider human behavior, right?
Yeah.
And I just thought maybe we could just give a little bit of background.
Okay.
You and I really worked together a few years back, and then we've gone our separate ways, and we've reconnected, which was great, and a lot happening in your world, in my world. So, what's been your journey, and if there's anything you want to share regarding what made you come back and what you're experiencing at the moment, so that we can talk about the topics for today, which are really about how a coach, a new coach or an existing coach, can really succeed in this what's become a super noisy space, right?
Exactly. Okay, so from a background perspective, I've kind of had two distinct and parallel careers. So I spent 25 years in the corporate sector, starting on the front line and working my way up to senior manager, which I did for the last 20, which gave me access to a lot of really good training in the corporate space. That's one of the great benefits of a corporate career, is that you get a lot of really good free training. But at the same time, I had operated 7 different businesses of my own in 7 different industries, 3 of which I still have. 4 of which, I mean, quite honestly, 2, one was Event Company. It got shut down during the pandemic. And the other 3 I sold. So I kind of built them with the express purpose of selling them. And when it got to the point where I could, I did. And the 3 remaining ones I still operate to this day. And one of those is my coaching business. So I did the corporate thing, and it got to a certain point where you rise up the corporate ladder and everybody wants you to eventually move to head office, and head office was seemingly always in Toronto, and I didn't want to move to Toronto. No offense to Toronto, but I'm a Calgarian and I like it here, and I didn't want to move my kids. So out of the blue, you approached me about whether I was interested in becoming a business coach. And so after several conversations back and forth, I decided to go that route, and I did that for 3 years. And then one of a very old friend and someone I'd worked with several times approached me about, he wanted to sell his IT business, and while he was selling it, he didn't have time to run it. So I went and ran it. The plan was to run it for 2 years, and then I would leave. He would sell the business, obviously, and I would go back to business coaching, but didn't get it sold. And he ultimately decided he didn't want to do it anymore, got bought out by his partners. Pandemic came along, and before you knew it, I'd been there 5 years. So 2 years ago, I decided, okay, I had enough of working for other people. I wanted to go back to working for myself full time, and I went back to coaching. And one of the interesting things is when I left coaching for a while, And I was still coaching during that period of time with my historical clients, but I wasn't adding clients, and I wasn't marketing. I wasn't doing anything to increase the business. I started going back out networking and found that I couldn't go to a networking event without there being 4 or 5 other business coaches in there. So the space had become a lot more crowded in the time that I was away from it. Which then sent me down the path of, well, how do I stand out in that crowd? Which leads us to today.
Yeah, and it's an interesting journey because you and I had some parallels in some of those things, corporate world, small business, many business ventures along the way. And to find ourselves now, in the coaching space, where I believe this is the best space for us to help people and give back all of that corporate education and experience in small business and so forth that we've had. And really the podcast today, and we're going to keep doing this, is, we're hearing that many of the people that we reach out to, whether they're a business owner, leader, or coach, they want to hear from people that are doing it, the successful coaches that have been able to really build their practice. And so we're going to keep that discussion going and reach out to more coaches that can come in and share their experience and talk about it. And selfishly, we are behavior intelligence oriented. So there's a little bit of that. But I think there's more to it. And that's really where, the conversation today, I wanted to really ask you some questions about the 2 aspects of a coaching business. And I deliberately use the word coaching business. There is the coaching, and then there is the running of a successful business. And
Agreed.
Because you've been there a few times, I think this is really a great opportunity for us to talk about that and share some of those things. And the world has changed a lot during COVID as well, because technology's advanced a lot. There's a lot that's happened. So how has that shown up in your world? And, I think first you were talking about the noisy space. How do you rise above the noise?
So I guess the first statement that should be made is most of the business coaches I know, and I know quite a few of them, myself included, when I first got back into it, have a cobbler's shoes problem. So we go out every day and give well-grounded, well-thought-out advice to our clients on how to improve their businesses, and then ignore it for our own.
Right.
So I think the first thing, and the first and most important thing, is you need to differentiate yourself. Like, how do you stand out in a room full of business coaches? And there's a natural tendency amongst us, and I mean, just about every client I ever coached, to say, if I keep it vanilla, I won't automatically disqualify anybody that could potentially want to do business with me. But as a fundamental principle of marketing, if you try to be everything to everyone, you won't be anything to anybody. And it's tough. And I run into this all the time when I'm coaching, is say, look, you need to pick your market. And you need to focus on that market, develop expertise in that market, develop references and referrals in that market. And then you get the obvious resistance is, yeah, but I mean, I'm disqualifying all the rest of these people. And my argument to that is, no, you're not. Because they're ultimately not going to do business with you if you don't have any perceived expertise in their industry. Now, I'll be the first one to tell you that I think it's an advantage as a coach to not have any preconceived notions about an industry.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's not a marketable viewpoint to the client.
People want to relate to their coach and their experience with the coach, that the coach can understand them.
Yeah.
How often do business owners say to you, well, you don't understand my business, right?
Yeah, I went back to university for a couple of years part-time to take digital marketing because I couldn't talk to a marketing person and understand a word they were saying. They spoke this strange language full of weird acronyms that I didn't understand.
Yeah.
So it's easy for me to sit here and say to differentiate, but how do you differentiate? So the first thing, you need to decide what type of coach you want to be. Do you want to be a business coach? Do you want to be, and the proliferation of different kind of coaches in the years I stepped away is absolutely mind-boggling. Spiritual coaches, life coaches, business coaches, entrepreneur coaches, sales coaches, marketing coaches.
Yeah.
So what type of coach do you want to be? And that relates back to your why. Like, why are you doing this? My why is I really enjoy the work. I love problem solving. And quite frankly, at this stage of my career, if I can engage in win-win situations where I obviously win because I'm not doing this for free, and the client wins because they have a better business as a result, what better way to spend the tail end of your career? You also need to understand what your value is. Like what do you bring to this that might differentiate you from other people? Do you have a long track record in sales? That's what I have. Are you an operations person? Do you understand business process optimization? Do you understand marketing? Are you an IT guy? Can you effectively systematize a business? Those are the unique values you bring. Fourth component is what services are you going to offer? Like, are you a one-to-one coach? Are you a group coach? Or are you going to do e-learning? Are you going to do all your coaching virtually or in person? Because that determines your geography. And then all those components go into your UVP. And most coaches out there understand what a unique value proposition is and probably do it with their clients, but also likely haven't spent a lot of time doing it for themselves.
Yeah, that's exactly what we see as well. There's so many coaches in so many different fields, industries, and I like the cobbler example, right?
Yeah.
Because I know when we were running the coaching firm and worked with lots of businesses and so forth, there was many times that I would suggest something and I go, oh, that something comes up and you go, that's a really good idea, I should do that myself, and you make a note and sometimes you get to it, sometimes you never get to it, right?
Yeah. It's taking the time at the beginning or the onset of your business, or just driving a stake in the ground and say, I'm not doing anything this week besides laying the foundation. It's that old saying, you can't build a new house on a bad foundation. To build the foundation for your business, if it means a little bit of retrenching.
And that laser focusing your offer and understanding your target audience, that's probably one of the hardest things, right? That a coach can do today, but it's the most important thing at the same time, is what you're saying.
Well, so to give you an example, so I do a lot of, and we'll cover this off in the next or one of these pieces, which is marketing, but I do a lot of networking. So, I mean, some salacious name dropping like BX, BNI, that kind of thing. And in every single one of those, you have to stand up and kind of give your 40 or 60 second pitch. And that gave me more pause actually than anything else I've ever done, because the last thing you want to do as a business coach is have someone else try to sell business coaching for you. Because honestly, and to anybody that isn't a business coach that's listening, or any kind of coach listening, I apologize in advance, but they'll just screw it up. Because the context they understand it is based on the service you've delivered for them. Right. So you're automatically pigeonholed into, well, you got a sales problem. Well, this person does sales problems. But if the person has a marketing problem or an operations problem, and they pitch you as a sales problem solver, you're off the list. So you need to be in that 40 or 60 seconds, highly specific about what your target market is and what you can do for them.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's a nice transition.
You need to also make sure you pick an industry that can afford to pay you what you want to get paid, right?
Good point. But that's not always, like, I actually do, for a business coach, a disproportionate amount of work in the startup industry. And which is interesting, because I'm selling a for-fee service to a group of people that mostly want everything for free. Because at that point, they're chewing through money on all kinds of stuff, with especially seed companies with no revenue. So sometimes if I really like the idea and I really like the principles, I'll do it partially for equity instead of charging them. Anyway, so the second piece, they're kind of coexisting, but the nice transition for this is to move to marketing. So when you think about marketing, again, it's the trying to be everything to everyone makes you nothing to anybody scenario. So if you come out to differentiate with a clear view of what your unique value proposition is, that helps drive your marketing. Now, in saying that, most businesses, in fact, almost all businesses, get the most leads from referrals. And the beauty of referrals is they're pre-qualified. So when a referral lands on my desk, they're automatically a prospect. They're not a suspect anymore.
Right.
And generally, they're not competitive. So nobody who sends me a referral, or very few people send me a referral, send it to 5 other business coaches to go compete for that business. They send that referral just to me. And that referral is usually based on me telling them that I do this for these people. Somebody I've presented that to says, hey, that person matches what Bowdie says he does, so we'll just send him over to Bowdie. So within that, again, coaching advice we give to all of our clients that we seldom apparently do ourselves, and conversations I've had with other coaches, is ask for referrals. Like, actually ask your clients.
Oh no, can't do that.
Yeah. Well, so why is that?
Say no?
No, I think a lot of times it has to do with it's the same thing salespeople go through. Is I don't want to ask for the deal, because if I get a no, then I've lost hope, right? If I ask for a referral and it turns out they don't like me as much as I thought they did, then that's information I don't necessarily want. The other part of that is, what incentive are you giving to your client base or all these other people to refer people to you? And it can be as simple as a reciprocal arrangement to refer people to them. It could be, for my existing clients, I give a small, like, I mean, you're not supposed to discount your primary service, but I'll give them like a free session, or I won't charge them for a session. And for me, I've got offsetting revenue at that point because it's turned into a client.
Yep.
So it isn't that big a deal, but it saves my client money, and it acknowledges it. Some people send flowers. I mean, you can get branded merchandise. There's all kinds of stuff you can do.
Right. You're really, you're familiar with the whole sales and marketing side of things. So
Yeah.
that's really one of the probably the most important parts of starting a coaching practice and moving away from just this is nice, this is a hobby, this is nice to do, to actually realizing that, hey, not only do you need to run a successful business, but you need to do that because all the coaches you are going to come up against are also thinking they need to run a successful business. So if you don't do that, and as you said, starting with the differentiation, otherwise you're just part of the noise. But the point you're talking to now is really getting your head around the marketing strategy and the execution of that, right?
Yeah. And to add to that, it's also the intentional systemization of your business.
Right.
You're not setting a good example as a business coach if you go out every day and tell your clients you need predictable outcomes, so you need to systematize your business, and then run around yourself like a chicken with his head cut off. So to quickly cover on the other elements of marketing, there's the obvious verticalizing your business, right? So geography, industry, and you can verticalize around these themes, right? What problem are you fixing? Or what challenge are you overcoming? What industries do you specialize in? What geography do you want to cover? Do you want to do it virtually all over North America for a pinpointed industry, or do you want to do it for a broader market and do it live, or a smaller market and do it live geographically, or both? Then you have one interesting one is what's your focus. So this deals specifically with business coaching. So if there's other coaches, I apologize, but business coaching has started to fracture a bit around, am I coaching the business, or am I coaching the owner, or am I coaching both?
Right.
So I've actually so I am an on the business guy. I don't ignore the needs of the client, but I tend to focus on the business itself and the outcomes from the business. I've talked to business coaches who are solely focused on the psyche and behaviors of the owner. And I personally don't necessarily subscribe to both of those models. I subscribe to the concentrate on both.
The combination.
Yeah, you can't ignore the owner of a business, but you can't just spend all your time focusing on the owner's psyche. You have to come back to the mechanics of the business.
Well, the team, the things that they need to have in the business to be successful. And do you refer them to experts for different sectors? Like if it's finance, do you refer them to an accountant? If it's
yeah. Legal? I'm a master generalist by trade. I guess that I actually do a lot of work as a fractional CEO. But I'm a generalist, and it is not worth the client's money, especially when you get into marketing. For me, at the rate I charge, for me to sit around trying to figure out how to post a blog on LinkedIn, when you can go to an expert that can do it for a much lower hourly rate in a tenth of the amount of time it takes me. That's not the best use of the client's money, nor the best use of me.
Right.
And I mean, selfishly, it's not work I really want to do anyway. So,
well, it keeps you. I call it the helicopter view. You're really working with the CEO as a co-pilot, if you like, in a helicopter looking
Yeah.
after business, and there are things that need to be done in the business, but you're aware enough of what needs to happen and what results need to come out of those areas for the business to be successful.
Yeah.
But as you say, you've also got to work on the owner who's directing, or the orchestra, if you like.
Yeah. And I mean, I am not a self-professed touchy-feely person. And I naturally gravitate to the mechanics of the business and away from I'm not disrespectful and I don't bully the owner, but I've spent, without my service delivery model, which is the next thing we're going to talk about, I would probably get too far away from considering the owner. So it's built into bringing me back to it is built into my system, my service delivery model.
So before you go into that, now you've talked about vertical, and I just want to just touch on that a little bit in case people aren't familiar to some of the corporate language.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's fair.
And that is picking your target area, niche, whether it's a specific industry or local business, etc. But then you've also got the horizontal side of that, which crosses many different industries. And is it the intersection of those two that you develop your expertise in?
That's your sweet. That's your sweet spot. So if you go back to the original, the differentiation piece, vertical marketing generally is broken down by industry and geography, right? So I'm going to focus on manufacturers in Southern Ontario, right? So that's a vertical market. Horizontally can be things like, okay, what level in those companies am I focused on? Am I focused on the owner or the senior managers? So
your service then goes across that.
Well, yeah, and your service runs horizontally, but it's targeted vertically.
Yeah.
So after you've gone through what's your focus going to be, your vertical market, you've straightened out your referrals, then you have to start considering channels. And without exception, the first thing I hear out of every client's mouth, and you'd hear it out of mine too, is that, oh my God, social media doesn't work. So and that's why I went back to school to get certified in digital marketing, is because I'd spent a lot of time in sales and operations, but I hadn't been in marketing. So I needed to get a better understanding of marketing. And the one thing you absolutely have to accept when you go into social media marketing, that it's going to take a long time to work. It's trust-based marketing, and you don't build trust in one clever blog. You build trust over time by creating an affinity and a relationship and a trust that you're an expert on the stuff that you're talking about. And you can't do that in one blog. So if you're going to focus in social media, you can't just cast a bunch of social media posts, boost or promote and do all those things and expect your phone's going to ring off the hook. It doesn't work that way. It takes a long time. The absolute, in my personal experience, and I'm biased because I spent a long time in sales, networking is the best way to generate business. Like, a business coach is not an insignificant investment. So think about it this way. So say, without giving anything away, your average client, you bill $1,000 a month. right? So let's take a parallel. Would you lease a car without test driving it? That's only $500 a month, right? So is somebody going to buy a service that's going to cost them $1,000 plus a month, right? I'm low ending the number intentionally without ever having you appear in front of them, without knowing if you'll get along, without knowing if you know what you're talking about, without any idea if you'll ever help? Probably not. So the fastest way to bridge that gap is to get in front of people. And I can tell you, for all of the stuff I've sold over the course of my corporate career, my biggest blind spot was networking. I absolutely did not like networking. It was the only thing in my life that would give me pause, and I had to force myself to go out and do it. And in the rebuild of my coaching business, 80% of my clients have come from networking.
That's an interesting parallel or example that you use, because so many people are on social media, they're active, they're sharing photos of everything they're doing, etc. And there are some that really develop great followers and make six figures at it, but it takes a long time, as you said.
Yep.
Whereas you go to a networking event, they see you immediately. They their biases, their filters that we talk about, they make a judgment about you very quickly, and they can decide whether you're the right person or the wrong person within almost a few seconds, right? The first thing that comes out of your mouth, right?
That's why you have to have your unique value proposition nailed before you go out and network, because that's your 1 minute, 40 seconds, 2 minutes of time to make a lasting impression on somebody. So social media in and of itself, to step back for a minute, could be an entire podcast. Because then you're into what's your client avatar? Like, who are you targeting, and how do you laser focus on that group? Yeah. So the last component. Oh, sorry, no, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and before you even step into that conversation, we need to go back to that first thing that you talked about. Is, I call it the who am I? You need to know who you are in yourself, who you stand for, who's your audience, why they want you, what value you bring to that industry. All of that sort of stuff needs to be figured out before you even, not even just step into a networking event, but step into a social media platform, right?
Yeah. And quite frankly, managing your social media can become a full-time job in a very short period of time. So that requires a great deal of thought before you get into it, because you can literally throw away thousands of dollars a month in social media marketing if it's not laser focused and specific, which goes back to the very beginning, is who's my target market.
Yeah, that's a big topic, and I'm moving into segues. I apologize, but
that's fine.
It's an interesting area, seeing we're actually on social media right now.
Yeah, exactly. And nothing wrong with it. You just have to use it properly.
Yeah.
So the last component is, what's your service delivery model? So one of the checks you write when you're making commitments to your clients is the fact that you're going to generate outcomes. And that's still what needs to happen, because you can't slowly transition to someone who goes in or shows up once every 2 weeks or once a week and says and listens to the client talk about all the things that aren't going well, because it won't be too long, 6 months in, before they go, I've paid you X amount of money and produced absolutely nothing.
So it's
So
not
not only are they probably not a client anymore, they're probably not a strong reference or referral. And you only get one shot at a reputation. So I myself have a very systematized business that like something to manage my social media so that I don't have to. Something that creates accountability for my clients without me constantly having to remember to do it. So every coaching session ends with action items. The action items get, along with the session notes, get entered into the system, and the system reminds the client that they have the action item and reminds me that they haven't done it yet in case I want to personally follow up. The session notes are in the system so the client can refer back to the teachings they've gotten and the discussions we've had during those sessions. So the information's there, the accountability's there, and it's consistently delivered. The other thing is my system allows me to enter metrics, which the client then goes in monthly, weekly, whatever cadence we set, and has to put the results in. So they're constantly reminded of what their participation in creating outcomes is.
great.
The other thing I do, which is near and dear to your heart, is I need to better understand how to optimize my relationship with a particular client. So for that, I use AccuMatch. So a lot of coaches will have familiarity with things like DISC or Myers-Briggs, which is personality assessment. I'm less inclined to be worried about their personality than I am their behavior. So AccuMatch allows me to understand how to better communicate with my client in terms that they'll understand, and how better to motivate them towards the outcomes that they desire. Now, in saying all that, you can better explain AccuMatch than I can, but I've had great success using it. I had a client have a client that for 5 years, I kept trying to get him to set a 5-year plan, and he just wouldn't do it. So I surveyed him, ran him through the process, and determined that he just has no future thinking bias in the way he's in his behavior. It's all past and present. So what that taught me in that case was that I could still set goals and objectives. I just had to set them for less
Short term.
Yeah. Like I couldn't have 5-year goals or 1-year goals. They had to be like weekly and monthly. And since then, he's turned a significant corner in his progress towards those goals.
Yeah.
The other nice thing about it is that putting in that effort up front sends a clear message to your client that you're not just someone who's showing up and imparting wisdom on them twice a month. There's actually a science to this.
Yes, that's a great point, because I've heard that story so many times. People that join us and do the AccuMatch and behavior intelligence training, that they often say, "Oh, I had a client for 2 years and I didn't realize that this is what was happening until I mapped them and I understood how their brain works, basically." And understanding their brain program, how they got to be the way they are, is just part of the journey to help them grow and improve and develop new programs, right?
Yeah.
And you're doing it without them realizing, because you've got this information that lets you tap into how their brain receives information, their receptors, right?
Yeah. Well, the other thing is I map them against me because I've done the process too.
Right.
To look for gaps where my natural behavior is going to conflict directly with theirs.
Tendency. You're human, you mean?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we're all human. We forget that, and that's a really good reminder. Map yourself with your client, right? Because your
Yeah.
biases will show up. Gosh.
Oh yeah. So maybe you want to talk a little about what it is, like triggers and neural pathways leading to behaviors. Again, you're much more eloquent than I am. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, without getting into the neuroscience too deeply here, it's really understanding that, assuming you and I were born a blank slate, okay, and there's always the conversation about innate capabilities and things like that, but they're the exception. But most of us are really who we are today based on what we've practiced and learned and what's been reinforced, right?
Yeah.
And the reinforcement has created neural pathways, networks, and myelinated sheaths. We won't go into too much of the detail of that, but basically it's become like a superhighway. It's instant unconscious, like brushing your teeth. You don't even think about it. Right?
Yeah.
And when we come along as a coach and we see that they're really strong here, but they're not in this area, and they've never done that before, their natural tendency is to keep doing what they've always done.
Yeah.
And through practice, we help them to learn this other thing. And through rewarding that and seeing the KPIs, and as you said, having a system that they can visually see what's going on, it shifts the intangible coaching into a much more tangible one.
Yeah, it becomes a process, right? As opposed to I'm making this up as I go along.
Yeah, you might as well go and have a beer with your client, and or the therapy approach will, you know what you need to do. You just need me to ask you the right questions so you can figure it out. Well, how many people do you meet that if you do that, where they still go, well, I still don't know what to do?
Well, exactly. So that's the biggest frustration for a business coach, and this is the one that I'd experienced early on in my coaching career, was being asked by someone who's clearly overwhelmed. So a client that's clearly overwhelmed by everything going on in their business. They're buried, their personal life suffering. They don't know what to do. Me dropping in once a week and saying, do this, do this, do this, and adding more work to someone who can't get the work done that they're already doing isn't allowing, or isn't generating a whole ton of value. And ultimately, in the long term, it won't end well.
That's the paintbrush approach, I call it, going into every business and giving them the same instructions, the same things, and expecting that the business will fix the owner's life, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, I won't get into there are structured programs built off of what would be traditional business coaching that are out there that you can actually buy. The problem, and I've had clients or prospective clients that bought them. The problem is if you're not ready to sit in a room and do visioning and strategic and tactical mapping, then it's not the right solution for you, and you need to be able to pivot to what works in the short term. You also need to So one of the things I offer as a business coach, and this is a good strategy for other ones that want to consider it, if you have the prerequisite basic skills to do it, offer implementation services at a high level. So instead of just dropping by every week or every 2 weeks and getting the state of the nation and giving advice, roll up your sleeves and get involved in the business a bit. Now, again, not to the point where you're doing their marketing for them, because you may or may not be the best person to get that tactical, but maybe you're directing the marketing person or the marketing company on the client's behalf, because they can't do it. Like an overwhelmed business leader doesn't need you to give them 10 more things to do. And I can almost guarantee you that will not end well for the client or the business coach.
Right.
Yes, one other question.
It's very satisfying for the coach, though, because look how much I gave you.
It's not that satisfying when the client leaves.
Exactly. So ego gets in the way sometimes with a lot of coaches, or wanting to prove themselves rather than actually paying attention to what their client needs are, right?
Well, that's another interesting subject that we should quickly touch on. Is I have yet to ever meet a business coach, including myself, that when they first start out isn't waist deep in the imposter syndrome.
Right.
Am I really capable? Do I really have the knowledge to do this? The way to overcome that is to be realistic about who you are when you present yourself. I mean, if you have a long career in sales but don't know that much about marketing, do not present yourself as being waist deep in marketing. You're not doing yourself any favor by, again, broadening your marketplace. Yeah. You're not doing the client any favor by faking it till you make it. And it's just beating on your imposter syndrome.
Yep. And a lot of people do it because, again, that's a huge topic for maybe another podcast.
Yeah.
But I'm just looking at the time and I'm thinking, okay, maybe we need to just go over these few points before we wrap up a little bit.
Okay.
And so let me try and summarize a little bit of it, and you can correct me if I've missed anything important. That what you're saying is the first thing is get your identity right, and as you were talking, I was actually thinking, before I started my first business in 1996, I took a small business course so that I had the business stuff figured out, because I knew what I wanted to do as a business owner, but I'd never run a business before. So I took a business course. And then the key in that is, don't try to be everything to everybody. Pick your niche. Trust in yourself. Pick the stuff that you like, but also remember that people need to want what you love. If you love something that nobody wants, well, I'm sorry, you don't have a business, right? The second part you talked about is the marketing systems, the systemization, the automation, the process, which really, I think a lot of people struggle with wrapping their head that the stuff you do isn't all gut instinct, intuition. There's actually a process going on that you follow without realizing, and getting that process out of your head into a system just takes a lot of stress away.
Well, if I could jump in for a second, and you and I have had this conversation, is we are not, you and I, emblematic of our target market. Like my target market is 20 years younger than me. So if I make my decisions based on what I think would be appealing to people, I'm missing my market.
Right. So you probably need to test. Would that be fair?
Test and measure, test and measure, test and measure. Right.
Yeah. So don't just pick a area without actually, going out and asking your friends or going in different networks and testing your model.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then go back and measure its performance. And the things that aren't driving the results you want, stop funding them and spend the money on the areas of marketing that are making money. It's kind of the analogy I always use. It's like, you ever owned an old car?
Yeah, once.
Right. So muffler's going. Should I replace the muffler or should I buy a new car? Yeah, I'll replace the muffler. And then the transmission starts to go. Well, do I replace the transmission or do I get a new car? It's the same thing in marketing. Like, what if I just spend that last $150 boosting this last post on you pick your channel, right? Because success may be right around the corner. Mm-hmm. Well, you're not funding something that actually is working. So you got to constantly measure the success of those channels and move money around to where it works.
Yeah, we spend a lot of time testing things. Social media is a test platform because you get instant feedback, whether something resonates with people, whether they like it or not, without spending a lot of money building it all first, right? Oh, yeah, if you build it, they will come. Just isn't real, right?
No.
Yeah.
The platform, but yeah, that's about it.
Yeah. So the second thing was really having a platform where, I call it, you're not adding more chaos to your life. A platform where everything works together seamlessly. We really promote that. And we encourage people to not get caught up with looking for this and that and the other and trying to get them all to work together. That's become, for a lot of people, the technological barrier, I think, which is today, it's a big differentiation. If you're competing with another coach that does exactly what you're doing and you've got technology figured out and automated, guess what impression you leave on your client versus someone who's dealing with chaos? Your prospect is going to walk away, right? They're going
to go. That. Am I supposed to convince a client that I'm going to remove the chaos from his life while I'm surrounded by it?
Yes. Yeah. You are a mirror, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Drink your own Kool-Aid.
Yeah. And then thirdly is delivery, right?
Yeah.
So you've got all this wonderful stuff, you're filling your funnel, and too many people spend too much money and time on filling their funnel and forget that the real nugget of their business is delivering results for their client so that they have raving fans that refer people, give them great reviews, testimonials. And what's the magic number? They say a client is worth 5 prospects, or it takes 5 times as much effort, or 10 times as much effort.
10 times as much effort, and the amount of contacts, touch points, right, which has always been a thing. So back in traditional marketing, it was 7 touch points with a client before they or prospect before they became a client. The last number I saw was 77.
Wow.
But that's because every social media post is a touch point, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Every blog is a touch point, like all of those things. So they all contribute to that.
There's also a lot of, this actually goes back to the 70s, and I shouldn't age myself, but guerrilla marketing identified that self-serve would be the biggest form of service that people will be looking for. Okay. Yeah. And we're seeing it today with the internet. People will search Google, they'll look you up, they'll Yeah. So all of those are really part of the touch points as well, right?
Yep.
Because
Yeah, absolutely.
They almost know more about you when they finally decide to meet you. Then you realize, and in the old days that didn't have to happen, right? Because it was your first meeting that they got to see who you were, right? Or if you sent a package or something like that.
Exactly. Lumpy mail.
Great. So differentiate yourself, build a business with the right systems and platform.
Yeah.
And 3, make sure you deliver quality results, make it tangible, create an environment where they can engage with it, they're held accountable. Results, results, results.
Yep. Absolutely. One interesting thing to close with, potentially, assuming we don't have any questions, is back to the being your brand, right? I've been doing this little unofficial survey for about the last year when I run into other business coaches. And the number that I wrote down was only 15% of business coaches I've talked to actually have a coach. Right. So what does that say if you're out doing business? Because your coach business is a business.
Yeah.
And
you're running a business.
Yeah. So you're going out and telling everybody they need a business coach, but you don't have one. So I found that interesting. So I'm not necessarily advocating for it. I just think everybody needs the same look in the mirror thing, right? Could you yourself benefit from having somebody else?
And sometimes you need different coaches, so I recommend actually doing that. I've had several different coaches throughout my career. I've had mentors in the earlier part before coaching was even coaching. So it's a very important point to remember that you are human as well. Again, back to biases and filters and judgments. You need to be accurate to yourself. You need to understand your own biases and filters as well. So that's I don't think you should do it to yourself. You should really have a third party. The number of times that we've had coaches bring an AccuMatch map to one of our master classes and say, when I deliver this, the prospect said, "Oh, I'm not sure that that's me," and then they've gone home and shown it to their spouse, and the spouse goes, "That's exactly you."
I've done debriefs with clients with their spouse there, and the whole time, and I don't recommend that if you can avoid it, but the whole time that the client's denying that this is them, even though they did the survey, the spouse is just laughing and grinning the whole time. So
yeah,
Anyway,
fantastic.
I think we're out of time.
I think we're done, but I want to thank you. If I'll just see if I can put a quick thing here to let people know where to find you, Bowdie. Is it Bowdie at E2 Coaching?
Yeah, .com.
.com.
Yeah, if anybody wants to chat, like other coaches, I give the same access that I give to potential clients, which is an hour of my time, just to chat if they're interested.
Excellent, and that's great. So, coaches that need advice, clients that are looking for some assistance, all of that is an opportunity for them to do that.
Well, the other thing is I would really, one of my crusades is to elevate the perception of business coaching unilaterally, right? Because there's no barriers to entry to business coaching. Like I don't need a diploma or a certification. I have certification, but I don't need one to be a business coach, nor does anybody else. And I have kind of made it my crusade to elevate the perception in the market of business coaching. Because I think it brings tremendous value when it's done properly.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, thanks, Bowdie. It was an absolute pleasure. We were only supposed to be 30 to 45 minutes, and look where we are today. That's never happened before.
Well, for you and I, this is a short record.
Yeah, that's great. All right. So on the screen, it's Bowdie at e2coaching.com. Or if you want to reach out to me, it's Nagui at BIQorg.com. Thanks again. Have a fantastic rest of your week.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.
Excellent. See you.